the U.S. ended the final source of aid for Palestinian civilians, blocking millions of dollars to programs that build relationships between Palestinians and Israelis. The New York Times reports that this is all part of the administration's policy to end all aid to Palestinian civilians. Back with me, Dean Obeidallah, whose column in the Daily Beast this week makes the case that the administration's cruelty toward the Palestinian people is part of a larger pattern. Dean, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for covering this. I really appreciate
it. You know what? I think it's an undercovered story. I'm just going to go out there and say it. I think the American media undercovers this story, that what happened in Gaza a couple of years ago was so shocking that it got covered.
Right.
But now we've sort of lulled into a position where we've sort of forgotten the Palestinian people, that they're still suffering.
Certainly. And Donald, I mean, the point of my article is this is part of a pattern. To me, if there's one word to sum up Trump, it's cruel. And I think his vileness is like a black hole that has no bottom. And we have no, from separating families and children at the border to denying the Puerto Ricans that they suffered to this. And this is not about moving buildings. My article was not about closing the PLO mission. It's about ending $350 million to the UN Relief Agency, which is a lifeline for Palestinian refugees. These are not refugees, these are human beings.
Right.
This is their flour and their food and their school books and their education. 500,000 Palestinian refugees go every day for school to these UN relief agencies schooling.
Right.
Without it, they have nothing. And, you know, my dad's a Palestinian refugee. He came here in the 50s. America, and it still represents something great, but Trump has closed the door on refugees, but now trying to even painfully hurt refugees thousands of miles away with this horrific, callous cut in. It's a lifeline for Palestinians. It's what they need to survive.
Yeah, and we've learned that, you know, the sort of shutdown of help to refugees has actually sucked in Christian refugees who are coming from the Middle East. They're not taking them in the numbers. A lot of his base is, you know, very evangelical, but they may not realize he's not helping them much either. But it also has, and your column points this out, there is something that a lot of these refugees have in common. They are not white and European.
Absolutely, and we can't take that apart. I mean, Donald Trump, if one thing is consistent, it is an animus to people of color. It'd be the American or Africa or Haiti with the SL countries to banning refugees from Somalia. And if he could, I mean, let's not forget, he wanted a total complete ban on all Muslims. But Palestinians are not just Muslims. While they might be predominantly, there are hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Christians as well.
In Bethlehem, the city of Jesus' birth, there are a lot of Palestinian Christians.
And adding to these cuts, you have $350 million cut to the UN Relief Agency. Then you have $25 million cut to hospitals in East Jerusalem, which are run, many of them, by the Lutherans. They're there to give services that Palestinians can't get in the West Bank or Gaza, like advanced cancer treatment, for pediatric care, for complex conditions that Palestinians can't get there. So we're saying no to the hospitals. We're saying no to their schooling, to their food, to what they need to survive from free medical clinics. And even Israeli counterterrorism experts say this is not what you do. You're making a desperate people more desperate. How does this help the peace process? It doesn't. And yet the worst part, Christian evangelical base of Donald Trump, who love this, it's hastening the return of Jesus Christ. And in their name, in the name of Jesus, they're supporting making people who are the most desperate and vulnerable suffer.
Yeah.
Nothing is more un-Jesus Christ, nothing more un-Christian, but what these evangelicals are supporting in the name of Jesus.
Yeah, and let's not forget that inside the Palestinian Authority, inside the Palestinian territories, is Bethlehem. You know, they're caring about that. I mean, so what if the United States withdraws this money? What percentage of the total money that goes to keep Palestinian children in school, alive, eating, how much of that money comes from us?
Well, from this one UN relief agency, we give $350 million, which is about 1/3 of their entire budget, to provide school for 500,000 people. About 3 million people get health care clinics from them. About 1.5 million have food insecurity. They go to this UN relief agency. A cousin of mine worked for them years ago. They are on the ground providing the last form of subsistence for people from West Bank, Gaza, some in Jordan, some in Lebanon. So you have 1/3 of the budget gone. Can other countries fill up that void? Perhaps. But America is now, we're leaving. We have less and less influence there. And they're upset with the Palestinians not coming to the table with them. You're demonizing them. You're not only closing embassies, that's minor to causing suffering. People might die.
And Jared Kushner, who is in charge of Middle East peace, apparently, told the New York Times this week that Donald Trump has actually improved the chances for peace by stripping away the, quote, false realities that surround Middle East peacemaking. All we're doing, he says, is dealing with things as we see them and not being scared of doing the right thing. I think as a result, you have a much higher chance of actually achieving a real peace. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu, the Israeli government loves this, and Jared Kushner claims it's making the peace process more likely. How does that make sense?
It makes no sense whatsoever. And sadly enough, Benjamin Netanyahu has praised the cutting of funding to refugees as a blessed event. That's his exact quote, a blessed event. And he's called these refugees being helped by the UN agency fictitious refugees. So
Does he not believe they exist?
Well, in his mind, they're not real refugees who deserve any kind of help. That's why Donald Trump and Netanyahu get along so well. They share this cruelty, a cruelty of spirit and a cruelty of heart. It doesn't help the situation. Forget your politics. Think about human beings suffering and the American government playing a role in their suffering. It's wrong. We should stand up to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, more suffering people in unstable places become refugees who come to the United States. So they're getting more of the thing they don't want. People flee suffering. And where do they normally flee to, at least before this administration?
Here, like my father did.
Like
and that door is closed now.
Yeah, and that door is closed now. Obeidallah, thank you very much.